52 Sketches. Episode 4, Dancer Choreographer Angela Todaro.
Welcome to 52 Sketches, a podcast about creativity and creative practices. Here's your host, Rob Head.
Welcome to the 52 Sketches podcast. I am your host, Rob Head. We are here to talk about creativity and living a creative life, practices, habits, strategies for making wonderful things. Today, I am delighted to have on the show dance artist Angela Todaro. Angela Todaro is an award-winning choreographer, director, dancer, and model living and working in Los Angeles. She is bringing people and stories together through movement on stage, TV, film, and music videos. In addition to her choreographic and performance work, Angela teaches classes, workshops, and master classes. So welcome, Angela.
Hi, thank you so much.
It's great to have you. I really appreciate you taking the time. In this 2020 reality that we live in, I usually start by asking a bit of a dodgy question. How are you doing? How are you and yours faring through this troubled year with the COVID-19 pandemic?
To be honest, it's a struggle. It's a real struggle.
Yeah.
I'm so used to being around so many people and creating with so many people daily. And right in the beginning in March, when everything just shut down, it was a real shock to my system, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Right.
Yeah.
And you work in arts where being physically present is 90% of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a really interesting, we've shifted to virtual options for some things, as everyone has, and it's not the same, it's not preferred. It's not what we thrive in, but it is what it is for now. And in the beginning, it was really a real shock. And now that we've been in it for over 5 months, which is crazy. And knowing I'm at a point now where I've accepted where this is what's going to be for a minute, and kind of just adapting and knowing that the usually like the bigger projects that I work on and productions and things are just going to be on hold for a while. And so just trying to still fulfill the artistic side, just doing, smaller things, virtual things.
Yeah. Well, let's back up and ask about your youth. So how did you get where you are? So, if we go all the way back when you were a kid, what kind of things did you participate in? Were you a music kid, a theater kid, dance, visual art, writing, cooking?
So
what did you love to do?
I've been a dancer since I was 2 years old and thrown into dance class. Oh, yeah.
All the way back to the Mommy and Me class. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I had no problem, at 2.5 being like, all right, bye, Mom. I'm going to be in dance class every week. Yeah. My parents tried to introduce me to other things outside of dance. I did soccer. I did some other activities, lots of arts and crafts, but dance was always my favorite. And so by the time I was 9, I started really taking dance seriously and joined the competition team at a studio that I grew up at and was at the studio 6-7 days a week from then on out.
So really clear from the beginning.
Yeah. Very clear.
Yeah.
And
that's great. Was choreography something that you aspired to early, or was creating always something you wanted to do, or did it dawn on you later on after you became a mature artist?
No, it definitely was introduced to me as a young artist. When I was 9-10 years old, my studio, they really encouraged students to self-choreograph during our summer program. And at the end of our summer program, we would have like a little mini studio competition for all of the students. And that's kind of where it started, really. And I started teaching in high school and choreographing for our recitals and for other projects. And that became my focus in college as well.
Okay.
So it started pretty young.
Were you a dance major in college?
Yes, I was. I have my BA in dance from the University at Buffalo. I also studied business and marketing.
Wonderful. I'm personally delighted that you're the first dance artist that we've had on the podcast. I was a dance major as well. And going through your portfolio and your reel, it's pretty clear that you have studied modern at a university, and you've studied ballet for years and jazz, and you can see all of that training in your body, in your work. And so that's a beautiful thing to see, that you have this sort of various stages of your training, sort of all reflected in your work now. Is that accurate?
Yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, my studio was a really big tap, jazz, lyrical, musical theater studio. College was a lot more ballet modern fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I love it all, and I give all of
Yeah.
it so much respect. And
Mm-hmm.
in my work now, I don't limit myself to just one style. My movement's my movement, and I take all of that foundation that I've built up over years and years and years
Mm-hmm.
and let that, whatever inspiration with choreography or movement and things like that, I just kind of pick from all of the little baskets that I've created.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me, did you have important models or mentors, either at sort of the high school stage or in college, that at the university, that you can turn back to and say, yeah, that was pivotal. That was.
I mean, all of my teachers and instructors were all mentors for me growing up. I had a few that were major, technical, teachers who really pushed me and were able to connect in the studio and emotionally and technically through the body and through the physical push and movement. And it just really created a foundation to survive in this business and this
Mm-hmm.
industry as a professional.
Right.
So
Right.
I would say a lot of my teachers growing up from high school really prepared me for that. In college, they really helped me grow as a mature dancer and as a choreographer, and gave me a lot more creative ideas and thinking outside of the box. And again, that set me up for this industry in a whole different way. So between the
Right.
two, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to just
Mm-hmm.
say, one or two.
Right. This one, yeah. Especially with so many styles. Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing. I've trained
Yeah.
across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I also came out on scholarship to LA, and I trained a lot with someone out here who's no longer with us, and he was a huge inspiration for me of coming to LA and pursuing everything here. So it's like every teacher that I've had has been part of my journey.
Well, let's talk about that
Yeah.
transition. So you had a lot of training as a child and as an adolescent, and then you went and studied at a university. What was the transition? Did you immediately start a career in dance? Did you immediately move to LA and get started, or how did you get from there to making a living, doing your art?
I was lucky enough to receive a scholarship when I was 16 to come out to LA and train for the summer, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what opened up my eyes to Los Angeles.
Right.
And I had my eyes on LA ever since then. And I knew I was going to finish school. I knew I was going to finish school on the East Coast. I wasn't ready at 18 to just jump into moving to LA and putting myself into the industry. And for me, I feel like that was the right choice. I really wanted to go to school, and I gained so much, as I mentioned, from my university
Mm-hmm.
program
Mm-hmm.
that has really propelled me as an artist. I kind of had an idea what to expect. Once I was done with school, right away I moved to Los Angeles. I had a couple of
Mm-hmm.
professional dance jobs while I was in college,
Right.
which was great to just, start building the resume.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then just a couple weeks after graduation, drove out west.
Wow. Classic. It sounds like your whole journey has been very focused and very sort of textbook, this is how it's done,
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
it's so interesting. So many people don't know what they want to do and things, and
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like I have been really focused
Mm-hmm.
and really just kind of knowing, no, this is
Right.
what I want to do. But at the same time, that being said, I thought I was going to move to LA pursuing a commercial dance career. And not that I don't have that. It's just I found so many other sections of our industry out here, including musical theater and modern dance, which I didn't think was in LA. Just that was like what you go to New York for. That was just, and I do so much of that work out here, and I absolutely love it. And so it doesn't have to be just one thing, right?
Yeah. When I think of Los Angeles, there is a modern tradition. I think of Bela Lewitsky was a big deal in the 20th century, and so there's always been modern, art dance in LA, in addition to the commercial And so you've been able to find doorways into multiple worlds.
Yeah, I honestly have a balance of both.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it fulfills my bank account. Some of it fulfills my soul.
Right.
And that's what the balance has to be.
Yeah. How did you find the current channels of expression that you've found? And more to the point, how did you put together the streams of support necessary to be like, okay, I'm doing this and I don't need to get, 3 other jobs or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I moved out to LA 10 years ago. This was before Instagram, before major social media stuff, which I'm also very grateful that I built a career before all of that. I see so many younger dancers now who come out who are like, I have to have this Instagram following to book a job. And I'm like, you don't, because we've all done it. All of us before you did it without that. But I mean, I jumped into, I got on all the different casting sites right away and just started going to as many auditions as I possibly could, being completely open to everything. And I auditioned for my first musical when I first moved out to LA and booked that as the dance captain. And again, didn't really plan on moving to Los Angeles to do musical theater, because that's what all my friends who moved to New York, went to go do. And then found my love and passion for that. And now I've choreographed over 20 musicals here in LA. And
fantastic.
I kept my mind open to things. Part of my daily ritual, which I know you're probably going to jump into in a little bit, but is every morning I spend my first 2 hours of the day on all the casting sites and submitting. And I still do that to this day, 10 years, every single day. And that is something for me, that's what keeps me working full time in this industry, to not have a side hustle, to not have another job.
Yeah. I want to drill, now that you brought it up, it's a good transition to, we ask everyone we talk with about their regular practices. And so you mentioned, submitting on a daily basis, that's, part of the business aspect of what you're doing. Do you have regular daily practices or semi-regular that keep your going? I know, for a dancer, it's the most is the art that's most akin to being an athlete or something. And so your keeping in shape is, a bigger deal than it is for many of the other arts. And I wonder, how do you care for your instrument? How do you both,
Yeah. So
how do you keep going? What do you do?
What do you do? Especially during quarantine. What do you do?
Yeah, seriously.
When all the studios are closed and you can't take class in person, what do you do?
Right.
So,
I think, well, paint a picture of what it looked like last year,
No,
because
for sure.
I think a lot of people that aren't dancers don't know what that routine is like.
So, like many dancers, I have injuries, which is why I pursued more of the choreography route, even in college. And so I know my facility isn't 100%. There's just too many injuries for me to really push and train. But to maintain, I still take, I was taking random ballet classes just to keep my turnout and, just taking classes and finding different people to train under and to get inspired by. But I also found, in LA here, it's like we have hiking trails. I love going hiking. I was just in Malibu yesterday hiking.
Beautiful.
And I found, Pilates classes and yoga classes to keep up strength and flexibility. And I think, I do really think it's important for dancers to cross train.
I agree.
Outside of just our technical practices in the studio. It just builds a stronger foundation. And I found a lot more strength in my body from that over the past decade, which I think before, when I was training in high school and in college, I was just dancing 7 days a week, training and dance all day. And now I have, as as an adult and having my own time and thinking, well, I don't have to take 6 classes, of dance. I can take a dance class and a yoga class and go hiking. And maybe the next day do a Pilates class, and just kind of, and for me, that's when I feel my healthiest.
Right. So given this lifestyle, most working dancers are taking multiple classes per week, whether it's literally dance technique or yoga or Pilates. What does it look like this year with the pandemic and everything shut down? And so have you found a new pattern that keeps you, ready for this to end?
Yeah. What's interesting is in the last handful of years, I've been working as a choreographer and director pretty much full time where I'm not training as much as a dancer. And I haven't had time because I've been in productions, I'm working. And so you don't have the time to take class for yourself. And now I have all the time in the world. So what's interesting, like April, after the shock hit in March, April for me was there's so many online classes. That's when everyone shifted to online. And I found teachers that weren't even in LA, like you're finding people all over the world that you can take with virtually. And so I kind of just put together a class schedule every day of different styles. And again, between Pilates classes and then, modern classes, ballet classes, jazz, just whatever, just to vary up my week and have things to do every single day. And that's actually been all of April and May. I was pretty much taking class every single day at home in my living room.
Wow.
But it was fantastic to be able to then see how these other teachers are teaching, see how people are adjusting virtually, being just in my body again, and not having the pressure of being in the dance studio, looking in the mirror, having the teacher necessarily watch me, and just really kind of being aware of your own body and being kind and gentle to yourself in that way, and just really taking it for you, not for anyone else.
About this. Yeah. I wonder, these virtual classes are more or less a new thing. I mean, it existed before the pandemic, but everything went mainstream, during the pandemic. And I wonder, after the pandemic, do you imagine yourself continuing with that, taking class with someone in Paris or New York or, wherever?
That's the thing. If you find someone who you really love your class, that's a way to do it. It's even if we do get back to the
where
studio.
you can comfortably do that.
Yeah, I got enough room in the living room. just enough.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. It's that's one of the challenges of living in the city and, artistic life. Usually you require, to have access to studio spaces and that sort of thing. So it's a blessing to really have enough space to do your thing.
You don't have to sit in traffic. You don't have to find parking. You don't, there's great benefits. The space in my living room on my carpet isn't necessarily ideal, but.
Yeah, right. But
of course. the convenience of it and the chance to be able to take from great teachers that are not where you are.
Right.
Fortunately, like here in Los Angeles, we have amazing, amazing artists here to take from all the time. But there's so many other amazing.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. But it just gives you that great opportunity to really kind of have that. So I do think post-pandemic, I think some of these virtual practices will still stay. Obviously not to the extent because it isn't the same. But if you have an audience, why not?
Right. Of course. Yeah. So it occurs to me as you have built this career over the last 10 years in LA, you've done a lot of productions, and dance is an inherently collaborative art to begin with, but you've done a lot of productions where dance is part of a larger work in musical theater or other mediums. And I wonder, tell me about your collaborations. Do you enjoy working like with a director in pairs with groups? Do you enjoy being the director, directing other designers, that sort of thing?
It's so interesting because it's project to project. Most of the time, I love collaborating. I have found that I really enjoy being the director. But even that being said, I love collaborating with my artists, whether if they're dancers or actors. Like as the director and as the choreographer, I do love creating with my dance artists and with my physical performers and having open conversations with them. And I love working specifically, for dance specifically, I love working with lighting designers. And because I choreograph and I've envisioned certain lighting, and then they bring that, and then they bring even more than what I could have thought of. It's just really kind of neat to be inspired by and then to inspire, and then what becomes, from that whole process.
There's a vision, and then if you're working with somebody who's got more training in their art than you do, which is almost always true, and you're working with lighting designers or costumers or whatever, and they can take your vision and do things with it that you hadn't even imagined.
It's beautiful when you have this idea and you're creating it, and then when other people can contribute to that and make it even better than you could have ever thought of yourself. That's the great thing with collaboration. But like I said, I do enjoy being the director. And
it's a little bit like asking a high school student, like, how do you feel about group projects?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. Mostly, yeah. The nice thing, of course, in the professional world is that you're working with, uh, driven, talented people who
Yeah.
usually are a joy to work with. Yes.
And
Yeah.
as I mentioned before about the balance of, of different types of things that I do, because I still work as a dancer for a handful of dance
Mm-hmm.
companies. And when
Mm-hmm.
I'm directing a show and it's taking over my life, but then I have a rehearsal with one of my dance companies in the evening, say, and
Mm-hmm.
I could just be the dancer and not have to make all the decisions and just like,
Right.
it's so like, I love both sides of it. And that for me creates some balance as well, which is why I still am a performer and I'm still a dancer. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I still kind of do a little bit of both.
I'm glad you mentioned that because
Yeah,
I think you mentioned that balance of creating and participating. It feels like it's a nourishing thing. If you have too much of one and not enough of the other, you can end up feeling
100%.
unfulfilled. Yeah, yeah,
100%. Yeah,
yeah.
when I first came out, I was started just as a professional dancer, and that's what I was trying to do. That's what I
Right.
was doing. And it
Mm-hmm.
got to a point where I was in like 7 dance companies performing,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily creating
Right.
my own stuff. And it was
Sure.
too much of me giving everything to everyone else. And I really needed an outlet for myself to create.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to a point where I was creating too much and I was like, I miss performing, And so it's just funny. It takes time to figure it all out. And I'm not saying
Right.
I have figured it out, but I'm very happy with where my journey has brought me
Mm.
so far.
Right. Right.
Um,
And the balance has changed over the years.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, especially
Yeah.
as I get a little
Mm-hmm.
bit older and accept, my body's not going to do what it did 10 years ago, which is fine.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I understand you've gotten some modeling gigs as well. Is that something you get sort of as an offshoot of your dance work? People see you, or
it's
is
so
there a totally
funny.
separate business?
I mean, I haven't created it as a whole separate business just because it's just so much, it's,
Hmm.
I already do so many different things.
Hmm.
I just kind
Sure.
of happened to stumble into it again, just being on all these different casting sites and
Hmm.
submitting myself. I've gotten random acting jobs, but a lot of it has shifted into a lot of commercial modeling jobs.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's, we're in Los Angeles. I was like, I'm open to doing that. And,
Sure. Yeah.
I tend to
It's
book
there. Yeah.
roughly 2 to 3 jobs a month, and I enjoy
Hmm.
it. It's a different medium, obviously, than what I normally do.
Hmm.
It's similar in the sense when I show up for a modeling job as a dancer, it's that nice refresh where like, oh, I'm not the one in charge. I don't have to make all the decisions today, but
Right.
I
Just
can
tell me
come
what to do. Yeah.
exactly. And it's a lot less exhausting than dance.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's so funny. It's like, it's
Yeah. Well.
I enjoy it and it's
Uh-huh.
here and it is something that I'm pursuing alongside of dance and choreography, but
Hmm.
dance will always be
One
first.
of these themes that keeps coming up in our interviews is there's this balance between things that you create and you're putting yourself into, and then things that nourish you. It's like you can't do just one.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. The modeling is interesting because if you probably do photography projects where they're that kind of modeling, where
Yeah.
they're taking product shots
I
or
do, yeah,
clothing or
a lot of lifestyle product brand shoots.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Some stuff is, they'll do a couple little film things, but it's mostly stock photography things.
I see. Uh-huh.
This last month I just had an e-commerce job for a clothing company.
Hmm.
Yeah, a
Cool.
little bit of everything. A
Yeah.
lot of lifestyle, a lot of e-com.
I still remember one of my professors at the university where I studied dance said, she used to do some modeling. She would do runway modeling because they would pay her extra because she could do a pirouette at the end of
Right.
at the end of the runway.
Well, what's interesting
Yeah.
is what I found working with so many different photographers over the last few
Mhm.
years, just doing modeling. A lot of them have mentioned they prefer working with dancers because we
Mhm.
understand our bodies and are so much more intuitive with our bodies and
Right.
shape. We work on shape and movement
Mhm.
and, creating design and shape with
For
our
sure.
bodies in that sense.
Yeah,
And
you are
also
preaching to the choir.
the ability to also
Yeah.
take direction because dance is such a disciplined art form.
For
Especially if
sure.
you've trained in ballet and various modern styles, or just all forms of dance. there is a very strict discipline to it. And so we're so used to being told what to do and taking direction. And so it's funny. It's almost 90% of the photographers I work with tend to comment on that of like, I love working with dancers that, and they prefer that.
For sure.
And they like that on my resume.
There's an energy in your line that's missing with somebody who looks fit because they don't eat rather than somebody who's fit because they're fit.
Right.
Just the way that you hold your body and the way that you move and everything is your alignment, everything is informed. Yeah.
Sometimes I do have to get rid of the dancer, poses, things like that too. That's so ingrained in us where it's like, all right, let that go, shake it off, like.
Right. Beautiful. Looking forward for the remainder of the pandemic, however long that lasts, and then beyond that, what do you envision for yourself? Where do you want your career to go from here? You're now a mature artist working in LA for a decade. What do you see going forward?
The rest of this year, I've kind of accepted where it's not going to be like, where my career is going to be thriving. I'm going to be working on all these new projects and collaborating with all these other, which is normally how I imagine most of my years and how everything usually plays out. And so for the remainder of this year right now, I'm currently teaching some private lessons and things like that, still dancing, still bringing the joy of dance to other people and still keeping that alive.
Yeah.
I've done some virtual classes and I've done some virtual performances already during quarantine. So I'm seeing that being a little bit of a trend for the remainder of this year. Most likely we'll do a handful of other virtual performances and things like that. I'll slowly, again, get into the studio. I think one of the first things I'll do is just grab some of my favorite dancers who I love to work with and just start playing again. Because that's the one thing I miss the most of just being in the studio and playing with bodies in space.
You mentioned earlier that your choreographic technique involves material generated by your company. There's some choreographers that work, everything is generated from their own body, and there's others who like to introduce, concepts and then have material emerge from the group. And it sounds like you're more in the latter group. Is that accurate?
I would say so. I would also say it's a little bit of a mix of both. I allow my dancers really to be their own artists in the framework of the theme and the concept and what we're trying to tell.
Right.
I don't want to say always because then I'll put me in a I typically allow them to have some improv and freestyle and play to find what's best in their bodies. What feels right in my body isn't always going to look or feel the same in someone else's. So I allow them to take phrases that I give them and make it their own to a discretion until I say, that's not really working. Or it's not giving the feel that I want, and then giving some more parameters that way. For when it comes to my own creative work, my own concerts that I've created, that's pretty much how I work. When it comes to products that I'm hired on, whether if it's a music video or TV, a section in a TV show or a musical that I'm choreographing, you're typically on a more tighter schedule. I don't play as much with my artists. I usually just throw them, counts of 8 and then adjust from there.
Do this.
Because, you're on a lot more time schedule. When it comes to creating my own content and my own work and my own concerts, I allow myself more time to play. And that's what I enjoy the most,
Beautiful. Yeah. Back to the future question, if you think, are you an artist who thinks, you have a long-term plan? Like what do you imagine doing in 2025? And how do you imagine getting there? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, no, it is. It's so funny because you ask people in 2015, where do you see yourself in 2020? And no one predicted this.
Home alone.
By myself, dancing in my living room. So I've never really had major specific goals when it comes to my dance career. I've always been so open to taking in different opportunities, different styles of dance, different ways of creating. Like I said, the path that I've created and that I've been on has been the overall goal of I want to keep doing what I do. I just want to keep moving. I want to keep working with people. I want to keep creating new, new
You
works.
have the life that you have envisioned, and so
yeah, and that's the thing. I just want to, and that's my long-term goal. That's always been my life. It's like I just want to keep doing this. I really hope it doesn't get to a point where I have to switch. I don't even know what else I would do. Like I said, I've been doing this since I was 2 years old. I don't.
Right.
There's.
What else is
I don't know how to do other things, and this is what I enjoy most. Which is what's really sad. When a lot of us artists are out of work right now, it's not a vacation.
Right.
Sometimes we do need a mental, physical rest, but we love what we do, and I just want to keep doing that. There's not. Right. That's been my goal all along. I just want to keep pushing and keep doing and.
Beautiful.
Keep surrounding myself with brilliant artists.
Right. And what better place than where you are? Yeah, in LA.
Yeah. I mean, you have to kind of go to where it is, which is why I'm here.
Yeah. So, Angela, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about your career and your practices. And thank you so much. I want to ask as a final question, do you have anything that you want to share with, aspiring artists who are coming along, let's say maybe 10 or 15 years behind you, or who are just starting their careers? What do you want to say to them?
Be open. Don't put yourself in a box. I've found some amazing ways of performing and art and styles of dance because I was open that I never even thought would, existed. So, don't put yourself in the box. And if it's really what brings you joy, keep doing it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week and year.
And quarantine.
Yes.
You too, Rob. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.
The 52 Sketches podcast is a product of 52 Sketches, makers of earlywords.io, daily, private, stream of consciousness writing to clear your mind and unlock your creativity.